Welcome to part 2 in our metaphysical series of classes, this one on life after death, which will be taken by myself, Reverend Paul Nugent, and my colleague and friend here, Ashima Hui-Keneipp. Now, excuse me, I'm a little bit of a feng shui. Could you close that?
Feng shui.
Feng shui, yeah, right. Okay, so life after death. Well, as we were saying, in the time that I have spent studying life after death, and it really is a lifetime. It's a lifetime of study, and I'm told that if you go to the British Library in England, you will find, massive books, particularly by Sir Oliver Lodge, and we're going to play Sir Oliver Lodge later on in this class. You are going to hear Sir Oliver Lodge on one of the higher realms, communicating through Dr. George King in 1956. This is just to show you kind of how real it is. And we're also going to play you a description of one of the higher levels that some of us go to when we die. So anyway, this whole topic of life after death, number one, is absolutely fascinating, and number two, in spending a little bit of time in studying life after death, because you go out, you can randomly poll people and say, do you believe in life after death? Oh yeah, of course I believe in life after death. No, you just die, that's it, it's finished. You get all these different views, and that's kind of how we live life, and there isn't serious, in-depth, widely understood appreciation and knowledge unless you look for it. And actually, as a mark of your advancement, and I would say, you're even go out and look for it. Because the answers are there when you look for it. And when we do start to understand not only that life continues as death, actually it is life. It's life and life, it's not life after death, it's life after life. But when we do begin to understand it, not only do we begin to also understand this life and make much better use of this life, but yeah, it also makes life, through that understanding, it makes life a much a much more valuable time, but also in that you appreciate life more. To the extent that, the Hindus, the Hindu yogis, what they teach us is that because they did understand it, they should say you should live each day as if it's your last. Because we should, by understanding this process, we should be. We wouldn't be here to as Jesus puts it, sort of hoard things up. I think he says that somewhere in the Bible. And build up our bank account and attain possession. That's utterly, almost beyond actual need, temporary need. I wouldn't say a complete waste of time, but I mean, it's not the purpose that we're here. We're not here to store stuff up at all. Unless it's good deeds. That's actually the thing that we need to store up. And similarly to the Hindus, the I Ching says that we should, again, coming from a very enlightened individual, that we should be like the sun at midday. That's how we should be living. And one thing I did come across as I was listening to some of these lectures of Dr. George King, which I liked because it kind of confirmed something that I, kind of twigged a little bit earlier on as I was doing my own study. And that is that all this sort of life and reincarnation bit is the result of a mistake. We shouldn't really be doing it. It's all sort of, it's the myth of the Garden of Eden, but we fell, and we shouldn't have fallen. We only fell because we were tempted. We were tempted by our lower self, and as a result of that, we fell into the sort of how would you call it? I'm tempted to call it a game. You've got to be careful about calling it a game, but into this whole system of life after death. Now, Mark Twain, just one of the things that he said, there are two certainties in life, death and taxes. I have two certainties in life, death, taxes, reincarnation. We're here, the reason that we come back in this what I'm terming a game, the reason that we come back is to learn. We come back to evolve and develop ourselves and understand what the whole thing is about until we no longer need to go through this whole reincarnatory process. Just as Shakespeare said, all the world's a stage, we are men and women who have our exits and our entrances. And that is what we're doing. We're coming back, but because we get caught up in the part that we're playing, we forget what it's really all about. And we become too much that part, and we get caught up in the drama and the tragedy of the world. And our world, as a consequence, has become very complicated and chaotic and dysfunctional, as it is now. So when we're able to step back and look at it in a much broader perspective and understand that Mark Twain was right. It's a certainty we're going to die. But certainly from my studies and the knowledge, the teaching from Dr. George King and others, we come back. And as I say, we come back to continue to do what we're really here to do, which is, as I say, which is to learn, to learn who and what we really are and what we really are a part of. Because in the final ultimate analysis, as the Hindus say, Om Tat Sat, thou art God. We're God. We're God. But we have forgotten that we're God. And rather well put by Deepak Chopra, we are not human beings having occasional spiritual experiences. We are, in point of fact, spiritual beings having occasional human experiences. That's what we really are. And being born on this physical realm, because the question is, well, how many human experiences have we had? And that to me is quite a fascination. That's a big unknown, and it's obviously it's not sort of it's your turn next. That comes under a very strict karmic law as to how and when we reincarnate, and we'll look at that very soon. But one thing that does fascinate me relative to how often do we come back. The Tibetan Buddhists have a wonderful way of putting it, much like, as I say, the Hindus and the I Ching telling us how we should be to appreciate this time that we have here on this physical realm. They say that the chances of being born are as rare or as likely as a one-eyed, or some say a blind, either a turtle with one eye, people say with a completely blind turtle, but both we imagine are very rare, swimming across an ocean and surfacing in that ocean, coming up for air, and it comes up through the yoke of an ox, which just happens to be randomly floating across the ocean. One of these old-fashioned yokes that they put over oxen to pull the plough or whatever, just happens to be floating over an ocean, and a one-eyed or blind turtle surfaces at that exact point. I mean, it's incredibly rare. So, in other words, the opportunity, the chance of being on this physical realm is not. It's rare, and what is rare is precious. But we've forgotten it. We've been caught up in the whole drama. Whether we're a king or a pauper, we're all caught up in this ridiculous drama. And so this is why it's so essential to try and understand this process, and that life goes on, and that we come back to make sense of it. I hope if there's one that you take away from this class, actually Dr. George King says if there's one thing you take away from this class, it's understanding that those other realms are very physical. They're very physical. We'll look at that in a moment. But there's one thing I'd like you to take away from this class, in addition to that, is to ponder this far more and to be aware when you step out into the world and as you go through your daily life that you're on this physical realm, but it's dovetailed into realms above, realms below. We're influencing them, they're influencing us, and that is part of a bigger picture, and we are here to gain mastery. We're here to understand these things and to gain mastery. And the best place to do it, we carry on learning on those other realms, but the best place to do it is on this physical realm. And ultimately, you have to do it. You have to gain that enlightenment, that cosmic consciousness on this physical realm, as we will look at a little bit later on. I know I'm going maybe I'm all right with my time. I just want to show you what this is. You can see over there it's billions. That's billions of people. And along the bottom here we've got thousands of years. This is where we are now. This is plus 2,000 years. It goes back, I'm going back 10,000 years. Okay? And has anybody got a guess? Because I want to put on this chart the population. And how it's developed in terms of on this physical realm. So anybody got any idea how it was 10,000 years ago, which is 8,000 years, well, 10,000 years. Any ideas? No cheating, no cheating. Those of you who may have heard me accidentally give out the answer a little bit earlier on, forget that and have a vague idea as to, I think you said 500 million?
Go for it.
500 million people. Well, Bill, you are times a factor of 10 out. No, a factor of 100 out. So I'm telling you, it was about, I mean, we don't know exactly, but, those who research this kind of stuff estimate that there were about 5 million people on Earth 10,000 years ago. And as we mentioned in our class 2 weeks ago on the cosmic plan, everything right now is gone exponential. Whatever it is, everything is on an exponential curve. And it's exactly the same with population, which has basically, over the last 2,000 years, gone like that. There's not supposed to be that curvy bit there. Actually, the important fact there is, because we're beginning to tail off. It's just, we're still growing. But we've hit the most intense period. And so gradually we're tailing off a bit. But even so, it took us 10,000 years till about 1800 to get to 1 billion people on this physical plane. And I want to, later on, I hope in the discussion period, we'll get into this a little bit more, because I don't think it's by chance. As we, one of the main things we looked at in the cosmic plan metaphysical class was that everything is speeding up, because the Earth, like us, everything in creation is going back to, in inverted commas, God, or the source from which it came. And the evolution of Earth is being speeded up. And so, as I say, I don't think this is not by chance that it's gone exponential, because people want to be on the physical plane, apart from anything else. And so that's where it is. We're up to currently about 7.3 billion, which is interesting. I'll get into that a little bit later on. But first, what I'd like to do is hand over to Ashima, who is going to look at what other faiths. In this class is mainly going to be based on what Dr. George King, an adept in his own right, who projected to the other realms numerous times, and what he's come back and told us. So this is based on his experience and his knowledge, but Ashima is going to give us an insight into what some of the other religious traditions have to say about life after death. So if I can hand over to Ashima, who hopefully will only need to do this once.
Hello, everybody who are present here in the temple in Hollywood, as well as those who are tuning in online and who are still with us, and apologize for the technical difficulty, as well as those who will be joining us at a later date. And last, I also want to welcome those who are joining us on the higher realms. Our master told us that
Well, there may be some who are also here who want to learn.
Yes,
this.
that's a good point, actually. But more likely from the higher realms, but it's true. I mean, everybody's welcome. And before I get into this, I also want to say Happy Chinese New Year to those of you Chinese and who are celebrating the New Year. And I just want to clarify, I did not pick today to give this class. As a Chinese, we generally shy away from the topic of death, and even maybe saying the word number 4 in Cantonese because it sounds close to the word death in Cantonese. So we're that way. But anyways, I just want to point out. For those of you who have heard or watched Paul present before, he often likes to quote Shakespeare, as you have noticed, and I think you'd agree with me, is very, very Paul-like. And
well, that's a separate class.
And I like to start my segment with a quote myself, and there's a little story to how I came across this quote. And actually just a couple of days ago, a coworker, really out of the blue, told me that he wanted to share a quote with me, a quote that he had been meditating on recently. And when I heard this quote, I thought to myself, oh my God, this is so relevant to this class on Saturday. And the quote is actually a Native American proverb, which is as follows. When you were born, you cried, and the world rejoiced. Live your life in a manner so that when you die, the world cries and you rejoice. And I'll just read this quote again in case you didn't get everything the first time. When you were born, you cried and the world rejoiced. Live your life in a manner so that when you die, the world cries and you rejoice. To me, that's very interesting because it touches on life after death, reincarnation, as well as how one should live our life on earth. And as Paul mentioned, I'm going to get into or just be able to touch on some of the religious viewpoints on the afterlife. And I will go a little bit into the scientific studies as well as some people's experiences with the afterlife. And I think I can generalize to say that most of the religions, mainstream religions anyways, they do believe in an afterlife. However, they differ in their viewpoint of incarnation. For Christians, the soul lives on and it goes to heaven or hell, depending on how one has lived their life on the physical plane. And, depending on whether they behaved properly, you can look at it that way. And you can go to heaven if you repent your sins and you believe in Jesus as your Lord and Savior. But if you don't take his forgiveness or love, then you are hell-bound. And the Catholic Church also believes in purgatory, which is the afterlife state between heaven and hell, where most people will go to be cleansed from sins and prepare for heaven. And talking about Catholicism, it just reminds me of much of my childhood attending a Catholic school, elementary through secondary, meaning like grade 1 through grade 13 in the US system. But because I'm Chinese, I have always believed in reincarnation myself. And it is a very common belief for the Asian population, as well as actually a lot of people outside the US believe in reincarnation. And I remember when I was maybe 3 or 4, I would do shoulder stand on my own, and nobody had actually shown me that at that point. And I think that's a past life thing, if you were to ask me. And I was into yoga probably in my last life. So talking about my experience in Hong Kong, my closest experience with discarnate entities took place at a time when I lived close to this funeral home, and I was always a little bit leery about that and at the back of my mind. And one day when I was laying in bed before I fell asleep, I felt like I was being strangled, and I got really scared, and it just went on for a little bit. And then eventually I asked for help. I don't remember the exact prayer I said, but probably just something simple like, God, please help me, please stop this. And then it stopped. I mean, I can't say for sure whether it was a figment of my imagination, but it felt really real. So I think I sidetracked a little bit here, but I just wanted to throw in a little bit of personal experiences and stories to share with you. So getting back to the religious viewpoints, for Buddhism and Hinduism, they believe in this doctrine of karma and reincarnation, and that's why I've grouped the two together. And this is also something in the Aetherius Society. And with my mom being Buddhist, who eventually became an ordained Buddhist nun just a few years ago, she has planted these little seeds of wisdom, including the law of karma in me over the years. And as you probably all know, this cycle of birth and rebirth called samsara, it happens. There are desires or attachments. And the goal is to break free from this cycle of birth and rebirth to reach nirvana, as Paul said, this state of bliss. Another way of looking at it is nirvana means extinction, and the goal is to extinguish all the desires or attachments so that one can be liberated. And moksha is the Hindu term for the same thing. And in the Aetherius Society, we also believe the goal is to break free from the cycle of birth and rebirth. But then we believe the lessons on earth, as Paul mentioned, are very essential and very precious. And they are actually character forming, as pointed out by our master, Dr. George King. And we believe life goes on beyond earth, and as well as the learning. So when we have mastered all the lessons on earth, then the learning then moves out of the earth into other planets, and that's our belief in society. According to Tibetan Buddhism, the spirit of the departed goes through a 49-day process, and that is divided into 3 stages called bardos. And at the end of this period, the person either enters nirvana or is reborn as a human being again, or actually not necessarily in the human world, but in one of the 6 worlds. And some of you who know me probably know that I'm a vegetarian, but I grew up a carnivore, you could say. I loved my meat, and so especially chicken wings. So why I mention this is because when my grandmother passed away, my mom, a Buddhist, as mentioned earlier, she advised me to adopt a vegetarian diet during this 49-day period, which she said would help my grandmother. I tried, but I just could not really do it all the way. So I cut out all the other meat, except I could not bring myself to stay away from chicken wings. So not that I doubted my mom, but I think I was just self. And looking back, I cannot believe I could not do this simple thing for my grandmother, whom I love very much. So 49 days is really just an estimate, but it can be much longer or shorter depending on individual cases. And Theravada Buddhist believes in instant rebirth, but we learned in the Aetherius Society that rebirth is generally not instant, and the more advanced an individual is, the longer one stays or can stay in the higher realm. Hinduism talks about 14 lokas, and lokas are basically worlds or planes of vibrational existence. And there are 14 lokas consisting of 7 higher lokas, including this earthly plane called Burloka, and with the highest one called Satya Loka. Satya means truth. And the other 7 are the lower planes. And all these lokas occupy the same space. And this is also similar to what we learn in the Aetherius Society. The different realms are dovetailed together perfectly. If you were to say you have 2 combs and put them together with the teeth, and they kind of fit perfectly together, and that's how these realms are like, we were told. As for Judaism, Judaic belief is that the human existence does not end with death. However, Judaism focuses more on the life here and now instead of the afterlife. There really is not that much dogma out there about the afterlife, and thus it leaves a lot of room for personal interpretation. And possible interpretations include an Orthodox Jew who may believe that the souls of the righteous dead may go to a place like the Christian heaven, or that they are reincarnated through many lifetimes. And for me, this is interesting personally because I currently work at an Orthodox Jewish school in the business office. And I never imagined reincarnation is possibly an accepted belief or Jewish belief. As for Muslims, this is the last religion I'm going to touch on today because Paul mentioned earlier there are like 200 religions out there. I really don't have time to, touch on everything, so I'm just touching on the major ones. Muslims believe that death is a complete end of physical life and the beginning of a period of rest until Allah judges the person, the living and the dead, on the day of resurrection. And they believe that the righteous are able to see visions of heaven, and vice versa, the wicked, on the other hand, would see visions of hell. So except for these visions of either heaven or hell, the soul remains in a kind of soul sleep until Judgment Day. And when it comes, everybody will be judged according to their deeds in life. So within the Islamic tradition, there is this mystic sect known as Sufism. Sufis believe that a person judges himself after death. And similarly, we also believe that in the Aetherius Society that nobody judges us but ourselves. And I came across this interesting Sufi quote by a Sufi master, Rumi, and I'd just like to share that with you. And he said, "Die happily and look forward to taking up a new and better form. Like the sun, only when you set in the west can you rise in the east." So that's all I'm going to touch on for religions, and I think, and I've said enough about that. So in order to make this class a little bit more interactive, I would like to first of all ask if anybody here present on this physical realm have had any near-death experience. And I made it a point to mention physical realm because, as I mentioned earlier, we're expecting there are other people joining in on other realms. But at my current stage of evolution, I'm not able to pick up on any telepathic messages or messages that are being sent to me. So I'm just asking if anybody here right now may have any near-death experience, or in short called NDEs, this term coined by Dr. Raymond Moody in 1975, who was a well-known researcher into the afterlife. In my research, I also came across actually quite a few celebrities who have had near-death experiences. And I just picked celebrities because we're in Hollywood and people know about them. You know, you can kind of relate to celebrities in a way. They're human beings. They're just, you know, famous, but they're still human beings. So the first person who has had near-death experience is Elizabeth Taylor. She died on the operating table for about 5 minutes. And during that time, she met one of her former husbands, and she was told there was still work and life ahead of her, and so she was pushed back into her life. And she remembered passing through this tunnel towards a brilliant white light. And the other person I've picked out to mention is Jane Seymour. And she learned the hard way that she was allergic to penicillin. And she said she died. She left her body. And she could see herself from the ceiling, from the corner, that she was surrounded by people who were trying to help her, to resuscitate her. And she also saw her whole life flashing before her. And all these things that I mentioned in these two accounts, as well as what's mentioned by Bill and Karen, is very consistent with the findings of many other NDE researches. This tunnel, seeing a bright light, being greeted by a loved one or a guide often, knowing that you have left your body, and looking down from above or like outside of your body and observing, and having this life review, like, seeing your whole life flash before you, and then told that you need to go back because there's more work for you to do, or this is not yet time for you to go. And so that's interesting, and there has been a lot of studies on near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences. And as I mentioned earlier, Dr. Raymond Moody was the person who coined this term in the 1970s. Besides him, many other people have done a lot of researches, and one recent study, the biggest of a scale, I would say, was done by the University of Southampton over a 4-year period at 150 hospitals in 3 countries, the US, the UK, and Austria. And they examined 2,000 people who were experiencing cardiac arrest. And out of those individuals, 330 survived. And about 40% of those interviewed, they indicated that they had this awareness when they were being resuscitated before they came back to life. And so some of what they said, again, is consistent with what I've mentioned. Like they saw this bright light, and they also felt this deep sense of peace. and they were observing themselves, like maybe they could see the other people working on them from above. And so I'm about to, based on the time, I need to wrap up this segment with a transmission extract. But before I get into that, I'd just like to share with you an interesting anecdote, which was forwarded to Paul and me by our good friend Gary Blaze, if you're watching, in Michigan. And it is, this story shows that even skeptics, they cannot refute personal experience. It is life-changing when you have had near-death experience, or in this case, experience the afterlife. So the subject of the story is Michael Shermer. In case you're not aware of who he is, you can say, the poster boy for the skeptic movement. And he founded the Skeptic magazine, and he has this contribution, a monthly column in the Scientific American. And he basically debunks and has a really condescending attitude towards everything paranormal or supernatural. But then an incident happened on his wedding day last year, and that challenged his whole viewpoint. And so what happened was, on his wedding day, which was a very joyous event like all weddings are, his wife had just moved from Germany, emigrated from Germany just earlier that month, that was in June. And at some point she was sad because she missed her family, like she wished some of her family members or friends from Germany were present, but nobody was. And especially she actually wished her grandfather, whom she was really close to, was there to give her away. And she was raised by her mother alone. And so her grandfather was like a father figure to her. And with these sentiments, and she just wanted to have a little talk with her husband. And so the two of them excused themselves from the reception and went to the bedroom. And when they were there, they noticed this music. And it surprised them because there was no stereo system in their bedroom. And it was clearly not coming from the outside. And so they looked everywhere for anything that may play music, iPhone or whatever. And eventually it seemed to be coming out from the printer. Does that make sense? No, not really. And eventually they decided that no, the printer does not make sense, so they kept looking. But it was actually coming from underneath the printer, in the drawer under the printer. In there is this old transistor radio that belonged to the bride's grandfather. And she had shipped a lot of her personal belongings, as well as precious family heirlooms, across the ocean from Germany to the US. But unfortunately, a lot of these items did not survive this long trip. But this piece did, this radio. However, this radio actually had not worked for years. And Michael Shermer tried to fix it in different ways, but it just did not work. So to them, this is just, a sentimental item to keep, and it didn't play, and they didn't expect to hear music from it, like, ever. So it surprised them when they found out that the music was actually coming from the radio. And it was playing this really beautiful piece of romantic love song. And the bride felt, oh my God, like my grandfather is here with us. And it was a symbol or a way for him to tell her from the other realm that he's with her and he approves of their union. And so, because she is also a skeptic, well, both of them more so before the incident, obviously, but it really challenged their belief system. And so for the rest of the day, the music kept playing, and they also found out from his daughter that the music had just started playing just as they were having their ceremony, interestingly. And like I said, it kept on playing for the rest of the day and through the night, and eventually at some point that on the next day it stopped. And they tried and they could not get it to play ever again. So again, as I mentioned, this is just an interesting side story to show how loved ones do try to communicate with us in different ways. And even, like I said, skeptics are affected by experiences like this. So now that we have heard what the different religions and science and personal experiences have got to say about life after death, we will now turn our attention to what a cosmic master, Mars Sector 6, to listen to him explain to us in a very simple manner why we have these lives and the importance of the other realms. And this transmission extract is taken from the Fifth Freedom, Cosmic Consciousness, and we feel it summarizes or highlights some of the key points of our class, like in a very succinct manner. So please open your hearts and focus on the words of this great being, Mars Sector 6.
Freedom from a limitation is only brought about by sincere and diligent, directed effort through countless incarnations upon Terra. It is not some vague thing which just happens. It is made to happen Terra is a great classroom. Our pupils have come to learn many lessons. They pass from grade to grade through countless initiations, through countless apparent deaths, when they cast off a gross physical limitation for a time and travel to another, more subtle plane to learn, then to return again to benefit from their previous experiences.
Okay, part two. So this is where we get into what happens when we die. From the perspective, understanding of the Aetherius Society is given to us by Dr. George King, who, as I mentioned, projected to the other realms many, many, many times. The first kind of point to make is, how many people would you think, let's have another guessing game here, how many people do you think are being born onto this physical realm every day?
Too many.
We need rough number.
8.5.
Do you want to, yeah.
7.5 billion.
No, we don't have time to do all the math. So it's anybody. I mean, every day, 20 million people being born every day. Ooh, that's a lot. That is a lot. That's a lot. That's a lot. Okay. Any higher? Any higher? Anybody want to go above 20 million or come down a bit? Kelly, come on. Let's. I see that little mind working there. Any idea?
4 to 5.
Throw me a figure. Sorry.
4 to 5 million.
4 to 5 million. Wow, you're way off. I mean, I asked a few people about this the other day, including Ashima. Ashima said 3,000. So
I said 5, didn't I?
You said 5,000.
I thought I did.
Somebody
Anyway.
else said 3,000. So we've got to go from 3,000 to 20 million a day. That's a big disparity. It shows how much we really know and think about, what's happening. Because it's happening. And on average, every day there are roughly, broad brushstroke, well, actually not that broad brushstroke, approximately 353,000 people being born every day. Okay? Now, there's also people dying. So given that figure, 353,000, how many people would you say roughly are dying?
A little less than that.
Oh, wisdom at last. Well done. A little less, yes. A few less than 3. So, roughly less than... Well, I'll tell you. We don't have too much time. Roughly, on average, of course, 150,000 people dying. So, all in all, there are about 500,000, 500,000 people who, one way or another, or checking out, depending on which side you're on, every single day, which is pretty busy. That's quite busy. Every day there are 500,000 souls who are either being born onto this physical realm or being transitioned onto another realm, life beyond death. And just coming back to statistics, there are lies, and statistics. But that is a net balance every day of 200,000 more people coming onto this physical realm, which is, in a week, this is simple math, about 1.5 million people every week who are taking up an Earth physical body, which is roughly the size of Phoenix. So every week, or Philadelphia, every week, and we're increasing the population on the world by the city of Phoenix or somewhere like that. Over the course of a year, 73 million people. 73 million people. And over the course of... and now, you see, one thing is that we're living longer. Back here, time of Christ and all the rest of it, the ancient Romans, ancient Greeks, average lifespan was, I'll say at the time, about 25 years. That was the average lifespan. And there was, of course, a lot of infant mortality, and you were lucky to actually really get beyond the age of 10 or 20. So anyway, average age then about 20, 25. Now it's 75 years. So this is part of the exponential curve that we're having. There are far more coming and living on Earth at this present time, because right now it's very critical as to what is happening. But for those who are dying, and for all of us who have died many, many times, the first thing that happens, for many people, we're in a state of shock. I mean, Karen gave her wonderful little testimonial. Death doesn't always come when you're for it. It can come tragically at any moment, and does for thousands of people every single day. So when we pass over, we are very often in a state of shock and panic. And just to give an example, say you've been in a road accident, which happens every day, and you die, and it can't be. I have to pick up the kids from school, or I have to make dinner, for the family. What is this? So there is an extreme sense, or can be, of a sense of shock. And Ashima mentioned, as is very common in near-death experiences, this sense of a white light. And I don't know if anybody saw there. Things show up. You mentioned what happened with the Native American incident. But just yesterday, all over Facebook, for those who look at Facebook, was a fascinating story from a Catholic priest. Did you see this, anybody? Catholic priest who technically died in hospital just a couple of weeks ago. And he's come back and he's declared that God is a woman. He says, God's a woman. Yep, God is a woman. And absolutely thrilled, but he met this beautiful woman. It wasn't quite like that. But I'll just read it very quickly, because this ties in totally with what we teach in the Aetherius Society. In other words, this Catholic priest wasn't met by God in the form of a woman, but this is what people do on the other realms, on the higher realms, and our guides, is they help us at that time of transition, of great shock, that we almost, in all cases, tend to find ourselves in. And we're met. And it is a very beautiful, loving, white light experience. And what happened with this 71-year-old Father John Michael O'Neill, who claims he went to heaven and met God, which he describes as a warm and comforting motherly figure. The elderly man claims that he has clear and vivid memories of what happened when he was dead. He describes a strange out-of-body experience, experiencing an intense feeling of unconditional love and acceptance, as well as being surrounded by an overwhelming light. He claims that at that point in his experience he went to heaven and encountered God, which he describes as a feminine, mother-like being of light. Now, it's quite possible that mother-like being actually was his mother in the physical life. We have close karmic ties with such people. But that's what we're met. Whoever we are, wherever we are, when we pass over, we're met. And Dr. George King calls it, he says you can call it by many names, but technically it's called a realm of waiting. Okay? If I was thinking of it earlier on, it's a bit like if you go, imagine a trawler going deep sea fishing. Okay, and now they have these massive nets that they chuck into the sea, and going along, and then they pull up that net full of all kinds of fish. You never know what you're going to get pull up when you get on that net. And it's a bit like us passing over. There's a very mixed bag, 20,000 each day that are arriving on the other realm, and they've got to be sorted. But first of all, we all go to this realm of waiting, where probably if you're English, you're given a cup of tea and a biscuit and a warm blanket, but you're made to feel at ease, okay? Because it's been this very traumatic experience. Again, coming back to the overall scheme of things, there being no such thing as death, we are here to learn, to evolve, and to advance. And when we had that life, this life that we're now in, it's we're all engaged in different pursuits, different activities. We all have created for ourselves a whole different karmic pattern, and you've got all sorts. You've got saints passing on, or very holy, good people, very good people passing on with mass murderers, and everything else, kind of in between. And so what happens after that, what Dr. George King calls it, is we go to the realm of just desserts. And I have specially prepared for you another chart, which is quite simple, just as that one was quite simple. But there you go. This is the Earth physical plane here. And so we go through death. Now, depending on the karmic pattern, we go to these realms are more levels of vibration. The levels of vibration. We're in an aura, which, as Dr. George King goes at pains to point out, is just as physical. In fact, he says in certain ways even more physical than this body that we have here. That everything that we see is as physical as it is on this realm. Although, as Ashima was saying, these realms are dovetailed, or as he puts it, like a comb. And you can actually project to these realms. You can either go to the higher realms or the lower realms. He says the higher realms are just above eye level, and they appear at the time completely flat, and the lower realms of vibration are just sort of below the solar plexus, and again completely flat until you get there, and you find that they've got mountains and trees and buildings, just like this Earth physical plane, because the people who've passed on are us. And we take another thing he's at pains to point out is that we take with us quite naturally our experiences. And that is the environment that we have sort of, that's our understanding. We go to a level we don't sort of suddenly go to paradise. We wouldn't recognize it. So it's just as physical, because these people on these other realms, this is level 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and there are 4 below. All of the people on these realms are waiting, all under the law of karma, to reincarnate at the exact right time, in the exact right way, back onto this physical plane. So here they are on different. We're on different realms. Does everybody got any questions about that? Does that, after the realm of waiting?
Can people go from like 6 sub or -4 directly to Earth again?
No.
The physical, or do they go to 3 to 2 to 1?
Okay, Bill is asking, can you pass through the realms? Kind of. Is that what you're asking? Can you pass through you certainly can't come back onto this Earth physical realm unless you're extremely advanced. No, everything is completely governed by karmic law. And if you're on a higher realm, and this is how, because what's going on? We're there for all this time. What are we doing? Well, on the higher realms, we're essentially continuing to learn. And again, the higher we are on those realms, I have to say, the lower we are on those realms, because in certain ways, the people on the lowest astral realms, in a way, are just as advanced as people on the higher realms. But they are. This is where. Well, there are masters of the black arts, and whether here or here, they are influencing all of the other realms, including this physical realm. So there are scientists, if you like, or advanced souls, and as mentioned, we're going to listen to actually two of them fairly shortly, who are influencing those of us on the physical plane right here, okay, who are open to receiving inspiration in a very positive and constructive way. If we are, for example, genuinely trying to find a cure for a disease, whatever that disease may be, cancer as an example, we can be influenced by other scientists and doctors, advanced doctors who've died and passed on, but their vibration was a very good vibration. They were here to try to help humanity, who are trying to influence people on the plane. But there are beings on these lower astral realms who are also, through the realms and directly, influencing this earth physical plane, which is why we have wars that we have. Because people on earth are sort of responding to that. They're picking up that vibration. Why we have if you like, a very unfair distribution of wealth. It's why we have, we only need to look at our world and look at the news to how in certain ways there are forces trying to tear mankind apart, stirring up, war between countries, between faiths. And this has been going on for generations, in part because we in this physical realm forget why we're really here, and we get caught up in this drama. We all do. We all do. So on these higher realms, coming back to your question, can we pass through the realms? Well, someone on level 2 cannot say, you know what, I want to go up to level 4. They can't just go, because the frequency, the vibration is, they haven't karmically, if you like, earned that. But someone on level 4 can go down to level 3 or level 2 much more easily, and in fact do go down here to help people on level 3. Because we're all of these realms essentially are people who, when on the physical plane, are essentially good people. And some of them are very good people. The higher up you go in these realms, the less populated they are. They're number 7, which is, so we're told, basically unpopulated. The vibration there is too high. I remember many years ago we had a woman who came here into this, right here in this temple for a class. And she was sitting in here for about 10 minutes. She was all on her own. I was somewhere outside. And then she came running out. And, strange. And so I said to her, hey, what's the problem? You're not staying? And she said, the vibration in there was so high. She said, I had to get out. Very interesting. And so up, you can't stay up there. You can, masters, Dr. George King speaks, gave a wonderful lecture, Realms of the Masters, but even the masters don't stay on level 7. And level 6 is very, very high. These people haven't, on these other levels, haven't yet earned that right.
But for specific knowledge, they can move up to learn it.
Yeah, exactly. They're very good. You can, a little bit of... If you're say for example, you have vibrated to level 3, but you have particular musical ability. You haven't been, well, actually level 3 is pretty good. Level 3 is pretty good. But so you're on level 3 and you've got particularly good ability, you can go up to, for a period of time, to level 4 or level 5. And I hope you're sort of imagining this rather than just looking at a whiteboard with green lines on it. because these things are very physical, they're very real, and as we're gathered here in this room, on another realm, there could be a lake or a sea. There are seas, there are lakes. I think we might hear a little bit about that when we play an extract. Right in this same virtual we are in now. But yes, this musician could go up to level 4 to take a class from Herr Mozart, as Herr Mozart is right now, assuming Herr Mozart isn't currently on the physical plane. So Herr Mozart, an advanced, evolved soul, is helping people, study and create music. So this person on level 3, who is very musically inclined, even though their natural vibration would not be on one of these higher realms, can nonetheless, learn. And the whole time, they're up here advancing themselves, evolving themselves. Down here, certain amount of going on down at the very bottom. This minus level 1, I don't know, petty thieves, who lived a squandered life. Dr. King goes out to point out that certainly drug addicts vibrate to these lower astral realms. And now is the time to just roll tape, because what Dr. George King says is that this is where the real work is actually being done. He points out it's easy to be a saint in a monastery, in a monastery, where there isn't temptation. But you need to be before you can be a saint in heaven, you need to be also a saint in hell. And just before we do roll that tape, I just want to kind of explain why being on this physical realm is so important. Getting this birth on this earth physical plane, because it's as Dr. King says, it's where it's character forming. Because if we've been on level, say we've been on level 4, and we're going to hear a little extract of what it's about a description on level 4 later on. It's nice. It's nice on level 4. It's very nice on level 4. But when we come down here, we're given, it's because we're also bumping into people from these lower realms, interacting with them, and hey, the myth of Adam and Eve, temptation. Are we able to resist that temptation? Because this is where we are, really doing the real work. How much are we maturing? Or, as is so often the case, what is the saying? The flesh is willing, or something is weak. The spirit is willing. One of those. We all do. Our lower selves drag us down. And so this is where we can gain the real mastery on this earth physical plane. And likewise, say somebody who's been on level 2, someone who has been a very manipulative, ruthless, egocentric, mean person coming onto this physical plane, has their challenges to try and overcome in this physical life. And it's why we need to, there's the old saying, walk a mile in another man's shoes. When we are on this earth physical plane, we're not necessarily here to judge other people, help them, because they have challenges and issues. And the more love, compassion, tolerance, without being weak, that we show to everyone we meet, we're sort of raising the whole vibration, we're evolving the whole of our planetary system. Anyway, let me play now this little extract. It's actually 2 extracts from a lecture Dr. King gave on the subject of life after death in 1981, and he talks a little bit about the lower realms and a little bit about the higher realms.
the best lesson that I could give anyone in this room would be to take you into the lower astrals and leave you there for a few hours. No matter how good a member you are at the moment, I guarantee you'd be a better member when you came back. Although we're not talking about a Dante's Inferno with flames and devils and all this business flying around the place. We're not talking about anything like that at all. As a matter of fact, we're talking about countryside somewhat similar to some of the countryside on Earth, which has mountains in somewhat similar to our mountains, lakes somewhat similar to our lakes, seas not as big, but seas which do exist, but not as large as ours. And there's fish in them, the same as there is on this earth. We're talking about realms which are not as bright from a light point of view as this earth. In fact, they're pretty dim, some of them. The subtle aspects of the sun do not get down there as easily as the subtle aspects of the sun get up to the higher realms. And we're talking about blocks of people who have been drug addicts, who've been thieves, who've been murderers, who've been liars, who've been politicians, communists, who've been foul Nazis, and so on. And they seem to congregate together. Like seems to attract like. And throughout the centuries, feudal systems have been set up in certain places. And if you thought Hitler was bad, these jokers are just as bad, if not worse. If you thought Attila the Hun was bad, these people are Attilas. Some of you have heard the BM fights, and actually occasionally the Master Aetherius has given away the identity of an adversary. Nasty people, for instance, like Cleopatra, etc. If you want that, you know, you can have it, but I strongly advise you to keep away from it. A word or two about the higher realms. The higher realms are extremely pleasant. Countryside, somewhat similar to this on Earth, finer a bit finer in every way, not quite as coarse, vegetation not quite as coarse, finer, very pleasant realms to be on, a lot of light in more ways than one, extremely pleasant. Most of the people on these realms stay on these realms for some time, but most of them come down to lower realms in order to perform various acts of mercy, acts of rescue, healing, teaching, etc. They are extremely busy, some of these people, very busy indeed. All the time they're advancing, all the time their aura is becoming purer and purer and purer until it's fine, till it's beautiful, till it's something of light. And that's where you're all going to go, eventually, to these realms. If you've been a real good member of the Aetherius Society, I'll expect to see you on those realms pretty quick. This doesn't mean to say somebody's bound to get that wrong. Doesn't mean to say you should artificially speed the process up, because that would put you back. So there we have just a little idea of these particular realms. Say another thing, and the higher up on the realms you go, the more pleasant it is, the busier you are.
Yes, it does. It does ring. Do we have to go into the realms to give healing? He actually refers to one woman who is going regularly into the lower astral realm, which is unpleasant, and giving healing. And he says that she is doing far more good than people who are just sort of helping people up in these higher realms, marching to hell for a heavenly cause. So at some point, yes, we will have to go into the lower astral realms, and we'll be given work to do that we do not do, that our higher self does not want to do. But we have to. We can't just fly away and leave from it. We're in a way, everything is karmically connected. In a way, we're karmically connected. Everything is influencing everything else. Nothing in a way is separate, but in another way, we are all completely separate. And that is a paradox, and that's actually one thing that you come to realize more when you begin to sort of take on board this fact that why I'm really here, and that I can bring down intuition from those working above. Yes, I can recognize what's going on down below, and I can channel energy into down below. But you also begin to get a sense of how alone you are. And actually, the Master says, but that's also the beginning of enlightenment. When you realize you are utterly alone in the universe, in one sense. In another sense, you're not alone. You're part of God, as everything is a part of God. And it's those two coming together, realization takes place. What we can see from that earlier chart, there are far more people now, 5 million, 10,000 years ago. It's never been busier in terms of the transition. So what happens when we can't just suddenly choose, you know what, I'm getting a bit bored up here, I want to go back down onto that physical realm, I'm going down. Or going up, whatever the case may be. It's not that simple. In fact, I would have to, I'm kind of guessing here, but it's actually extremely complicated. It's extremely complicated as to how and when we're reborn. We're actually told, Dr. George King tells us, that we choose our own parents. We choose our own parents. We choose the exact time of our rebirth. But it's not our conscious mind thinking, as I mentioned, I'm bored, I want to go. It's our higher self. And as Ashima was saying earlier from, I think, the Sikhs' faith, that we judge ourselves. We go to a place called the hall, well, it's in words we can understand, the hall judgment, the hall of self-judgment, and our higher self, presumably with help from advanced masters, very advanced spirit guides, choose that next life. Because a lot of us, as you look at the world, we don't all come back into a rosy, happy family at all. In fact, probably most of the people being reborn come back into with lessons, with challenges, with difficulties. Maybe a single mum. Maybe we're born with physical injury or in absolute poverty, and that's the reality. Now, our conscious mind would never choose that. We don't want that. That's for other people. No, we want to come back, nice, have nice mum and dad love each other, well-to-do, good education, nice house, all the rest of it. That's kind of what the conscious mind would pick. But it isn't that simple. It's our higher self which knows that we have karmic lessons that we have imposed upon ourselves. And we have, as I say, it's extremely complicated because we have on this physical realm, in a previous life, we might have killed someone. Chances are at some point. And there is, by the law of karma, we may need to meet that adversary in one form or another. May do. You can't be categorical about it. So that would also have to tie in with incredibly complex pattern of how is it going to be construed that we will meet that person, which brings up a wonderful philosophical question about predestination versus free will, which maybe we'll get into if people have got the time. I know we're running a little bit beyond. Well, I'm going to, unless anybody has any other questions, Dr. George King, you will know, was a terrestrial master. And he would go into, or have the ability to go into what we call a positive yogic samadhic trance, so that beings from higher realms and also on other planets could speak through him. And in the early years of the Aetherius Society, you could have a two-way conversation, and we're going to play now a couple of extracts. One where Sir Oliver Lodge, who was born in the 1800s and died, I think he died in 1940.
1851, 1940.
Who died in 1940. Now, Dr. King, as a young man, before he founded the Aetherius Society in 1955, was working with beings such as Oliver Lodge and James Simpson and others, particularly with using chromotherapy, colour healing. Dr. King was very involved in healing work. And this particular transmission, we're going to play just a couple of minutes, is Sir Oliver Lodge, who is at least on level 4, perhaps level 5, I really don't know, but at one of these higher levels, who is speaking through Dr. King about chromotherapy.
And that was in 1956.
In 1956.
16 years after he had passed on.
16 years after he'd passed on.
I am Lodge. I would bring your attention to the fact that chromotherapeutics will take their active place in science, but pioneers will be needed to lead science into the correct paths of research. You people are in a position to do this. I will help you in every possible way so that you may know exactly what colors are and how to use them to help your patients. Good night.
This is another transmission from another person who passed on, a man called Thomas Lipton. I think he's the Lipton of Lipton's tea. And he was also very involved in yachting, in boating. I think he won the American. and things like that. He died in 1931, I believe. And what is interesting here is that he's someone else who's speaking through Dr. George King, because at the time the Aetherius Society was looking to buy a boat. And the first voice, I hope they can rewind it, is actually a master called Hui, who speaks very, very briefly. Calls out Lipton. It's funny how they treat him. But Chang Fu has been on the higher realms, we've told, for about 2,000 years. Interesting story with Chang Fu. He was very advanced, well on the earth physical plane, and he had been in meditation for a very long time, and a bunch of students, or I guess we'll call them students, people came by, and they saw Chang, they found him. They didn't look for him per se, but they stumbled across him, and they thought he was dead. He'd been in this very deep state of meditation, and they thought he was dead. So they thought, here's a great master, and we should put him on a funeral pyre. I think this is how the story, and they did, and they burned him, and he died. Chang Fu, correct me if I'm wrong, but Chang Fu blames himself because he said to clairvoyantly see that this would happen. By looking into should have got himself from cave or wherever he was to go into this period of meditation. The consequence of all that, or a consequence, is that Chang Fu, who, as I say, is probably on at least level 5, possibly level 6, I would imagine, and comes down, quite active there, at some point is still going to have to come onto this earth physical realm to gain cosmic consciousness, as he was endeavoring to do when they took his life. So at some point he still has to come back onto this earth physical plane in some form or another for that experience. Anyway, he I won't say in those early days, quite regularly spoke through Dr. George King. Here he's just introducing Thomas Lipton. And the reason we're playing this is because it shows how on the other realms they're very engaged, they're very involved in what is happening on this physical plane. And what's interesting is Sir Thomas Lipton knows all about this plan to buy a boat, and he's giving a little bit of advice about it.
Well, about this boat, I'll let somebody talk to you. Somebody who knows a lot more about it than I do. However, I had to come and give you some healing. Try and liven you up a bit. Lipton, come here. You're a seaman in your time. Talk to these landlubbers. Good evening.
Good evening.
Of course, neither of these two boats to which you refer is, in my opinion, really worthy of the name. However, they were made to fit certain purpose, and they undoubtedly do so. There is no doubt that a planing hull of this description warrants a very skillful design if it is to be functional over any length. However,
in America, the general trend is, of course, for speed. The average boating public is not so discriminative as I feel that they may be. If we take into consideration these two boats, and both of them interest me slightly, we have this possible major difference. Supposing for a moment we consider this 27-foot Owens cruiser, we have the hull construction here made reasonably well made for its class, by the way. Have it here made rigidly. We have the engine placed in a position which will give about 60% of propeller efficiency. We have a few glaring faults with the boat, which you've already found for yourselves, namely that there is a 160-pound water tank up forward when it should have been at the back. The cruising range of the boat is limited to 8 hours if you're lucky, possibly nearer 7. This, for a boat of this size, is not very long, but the hull is of a rigid construction. The theory is that the longitudinals, the ribs of the boat as well, will give to the hull its strength.
So, without getting too much into the technicalities of that, but it just illustrates how, if one has the ability, and Dr. George King did have the ability, can get in communication with masters on higher realms. We can do it too, but we would be done through, and not masters actually, so I should correct myself there. There is a way of getting in touch with masters through a channel, if it's warranted, but we certainly can be open to inspiration from our guides and others in terms of choices that we need to make where we want help. When we open ourselves up to help from the higher realms, we can receive that. If our motive is good, if our motive is correct, then yes, we can. So any questions before Ashima you want to introduce, otherwise the last extract we're going to play. But any questions on any of this, because it's this massive, fascinating subject. But does everybody get the general idea?
So we can talk and find out all these things, like he went into Samadhi.
Mm-hmm.
On even, a boat is a material thing.
Mm-hmm.
So you can take advice on any subject.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
You can
Not
take
only
advice.
That it's, you take advice for prayers and things like that, but you can take advice on any of materialistic things also.
And they want to help.
Yeah.
They want to
we
help.
have to use them here, and they should be used in the positive and nice way.
Mm-hmm. They want to help. But unfortunately, because we're unconscious to a large extent of what's the big picture, the complete picture, we get influenced by people who, lead us astray, tempt us, and that's part of why the world is where it is at the moment. Okay.
But if one is meditating and all, then the lower realm people cannot harm you.
No, but most of us aren't spending our time in meditation most of the time.
And I just want to mention something about Sir Oliver Lodge in case anybody tuning in is not too familiar with him. I know Aetherius Society members know about him. He was a well-known British physicist, and his work was very recognized for electricity, thermoelectricity, and towards radio and telegraphy, and so a scientist. So that's that. I just want to mention it in case you're familiar with him. And the next and last transmission extract we're going to play today, because unfortunately we had the technical difficulty earlier, so we can only play one of the two remaining extracts for you today. And it is going to be an interesting one, because it is actually a description of what we have received through Dr. George King on how level 4 is like. And that was received on September 23rd, 1979. And the information was given by the Master Aetherius, the master who initially contacted Dr. George King, who made this initial contact, and the Aetherius Society was formed, named after this master. So it's about, I think, 6 minutes or so.
Yeah. Just to give a few more words of explanation. And it also shows how all the realms are, again, interrelated. In 1973, Dr. George King devised something we do every week here called Operation Prayer Power, storing energy in a battery. In 1979, September 23rd, as Ashima just said, they had their inauguration of Operation Prayer Power on level 4. And Dr. George King projected to level 4 to be the one who first put the energy into the battery. And actually you can buy the CD. This is something you can buy. You can hear this whole thing. We're just going to play a little extract, which gives us a description of life on level 4. It's only a description. We can't play very much of it, but essentially they're getting ready for the arrival of Dr. King in this temple on level 4. The temple seats or can hold 60,000 people. So it just gives us another impression, another better understanding of things on another realm.
While he is getting ready to go there, let me have a look at what is now happening. This temple is very large by anyone's standards and has been used previously for worship and devotional ritual, although it is not really very old. It actually has been remodeled on the site of a far more ancient structure which needed certain improvements in order to enhance its shape, power, characteristics. Around a temple there is a large courtyard, most of which is planted with trees and flowering shrubs. I won't say of every kind, because some flowering shrubs will not really grow very well there, as the temple is situated very close and overlooking the sea. This particular sea is quite small, really, and is known in the English language as the Sea of Calmness, because it is a calm sea. The land that we are observing is known as Li Chahang Nahu, which is of ancient Oriental roots. Although Oriental, this land is not by any means populated by Orientals wholly. There are all different races who choose to live and work there. The courtyard is surrounded, as in the old tradition, more than for decorative purposes, by large railings. Some of these have been taken down so that the metal bars could be replaced with crystal bars, and when this quite titanic job is finished, it will look very startling, in that the crystal is faceted in such a way as to reflect light, and this will look very stunning, especially at night.
All right. So there, I mean, in other words, life on any of these other realms, in a way, is quite similar to the way it is on the realm. They're going about their daily work. On the higher realms, as stated, It's studying, it's helping others, and in the lower realms, it's I don't know, probably painful existence, not nice. There's very little love down here, and at the right time, under the law of karma, under the guidance of our own higher self, we will find the right time to be reborn as we are now. Coming back to this chart here, the thing that I put up on the board, which somebody got quite right. Here we've got this, and I did this. Well, we don't have time for but basically, I'm calling this is what happened at Lemuria. This is what happened at Atlantis. Part 1, the cosmic plan. And presumably there was a very high number of people on the physical plane. The civilization was destroyed, and almost back to this, very slow progression of rebirth, similar to what we've had. Eventually, coming up to the same situation with Atlantis. Same again. We destroyed the civilization, fell back, and this slow crawl which we've had. Whereas this is now, we're here for 75 years every day. Right now, 350,000 people being born over the course. That's about 13 million. 10 years, 1.3 billion. We live for roughly 75 years. So over the 75 years, I think about 10 billion. There'll be another 10 billion souls. So I won't say we're maxing out because we don't really know exactly the whole. But it's certainly carrying on growing. Very similar to what we've seen before. Are we going to destroy? Because we do know that in the new age world, there will be only a few remaining. There'll be only a few remaining. And my expectation, we know that those who are unable to withstand the higher vibrations, because going back to the other one, but there will be no lower astral realms. And because the Earth herself, this was last lecture, her vibrations are rising to a much higher vibration. So only people from the higher planes will be able to exist on this Earth. So we'll have just this trickle of people once again, but in a much more evolved state than it ever was here or after Maldek. Slowly rise as people from the other planet learn lessons and are slowly being perhaps reborn. This is all theory. Being reborn on this Earth physical plane, because we have a debt to this Earth, and we have karma with this Earth. So we may be heading for another. Who knows? As I say, it could be self-inflicted atomic war. Where we annihilate ourselves, or just the gradual process where people aren't learning the lessons they need to learn, being reborn on another planet, another world, to learn further lessons, and then slowly coming back onto this physical plane. Theory.
Wow.
Yeah, good for you. Good for you. That's the thing. That's what we, if you take away from this little class here this morning, still think, turning it over in your mind, trying to figure it out. Is a step of enlightenment, because as I say, understand what's really happening and what this whole process is really all about. It's much more sense of this life, so that we get the most possible benefit of life, which is a very rare experience, very rare opportunity. This is the testing ground, the proving ground. And most of us waste the opportunity. One thing Dr. King always said, when you go to like level 1, +1, or -1, or whatever, or 2, how they were filled with regret and remorse that they basically completely wasted their time when they were on this earth physical plane. It was just, a waste of a life, virtually. I always remember something Dr. King said in one of his talks. He said, and you'll die in ignorance, which is a terrible thing. To die in ignorance is a terrible thing. We're not here to die in ignorance. We're here to die with greater knowledge, greater realization. I'll be a little bit controversial here, but people from all faiths, you've got the good, but you've got Christians who in name are Christians but don't act as Christians, etc., etc., etc. But I think for those who go to the higher realms, I think that, and he said, like people, like attracts like. I think that, probably on certainly level 2 and level 3, you're more orthodox people who've been Orthodox Christians, Orthodox Jews, whatever it may be, Muslims, stay in sort of similar environments where they see a division between their faiths. But I think that the higher up you go, well, rather, there aren't these divisions. It's, for want of another word, and I say this is controversial, but it's more spiritual in that sense. You've gone beyond the dogmas of any one orthodox faith, because eventually the faiths all merge into a far greater realization that it's all absolute oneness, and in a sense we're all Jewish, and there is no delineation of faith when you get onto these higher planes. It's spiritual realization, and that's controversial, but a lot of the Orthodox folk wouldn't probably be listening to any of this in the first place. That's a good question. How can we practice to get in touch with the ones on the higher? Dr. King actually goes into that, and he refers to it as being by proxy. First of all, masters are not at our beck and call. So it would have to be a very good reason for them to be contacted. What we can do is we can, by going into the stillness, the silence, we can intuitively receive messages from our guide, a guide or someone. Now, in exceptional cases, that guide could go, and we're talking here exceptional cases, could go to, this is the by proxy bit, someone else on a higher realm, and that person on the higher realm could go to the master. And a lot of people get this confused. They say, I'm channeling, this master or that master, and it gets a little bit far-fetched, if I may say that. But it's possible that communication is actually being related down the scale. But the way to do it is by going into the silence and the meditation, and having good justification for seeking an answer from the higher realm that you can't actually get more easily on this physical plane. It's people. I can understand people who've lost a very close relative. They're devastated. It's a tragedy in their life, and the knowing that person, like the wedding situation where the girl knew that her grandfather was present, was very reassuring, and it can be very reassuring for people to have some contact from someone who's passed on. For example, I was giving healing to one of our members a few years ago whose mother had just died. And I don't claim to be particularly psychic at all, but I said, at the end of it, I said, I felt the presence of pink roses around you. And it turned out that her mother, who'd recently died, had a very close association with pink roses. Why did I pick up pink roses? But it was very assuring to her to know that her mother was basically saying, hi, all is well. But we shouldn't spend too much time trying to communicate, for party tricks or whatever else with people on the other realms. And we shouldn't, people want to know who they were in the last life. And, this is something that will be given to us through initiation only at the right time, because it can be very destructive to, it would only be given to a person in the right way at the right time, where they would use that knowledge in the right way.
I think King George, since we are already here in the Aetherius Society, can help us much more.
Yeah, we're here to do work here on this physical plane.
No, he helps us much more.
Absolutely. Well, I don't know about much more, but he certainly helps us.
What from previous, I have been away. I came to Aetherius Society about 4 years, 3 to 4 years.
But
I find the big difference after coming to know, because he just left in the 90s.
97.
It's not too long.
Yeah. No, this whole thing is, as I say, when we get our, I won't say we will get around life after death, but just to be thinking about this whole process, what's really happening, how close it is. Chang Fu, he says in one of these transmissions, he says, we're just over the fence. We're on the other side of the fence, he refers it to. We're on the other. They're only on the other side of the fence. And the more advanced you are, like Master Chang Fu, he's been up there for 2,000 years. And some of the black magicians in the lower astral realms also. I think that the more advanced you become, the more control you have over your rebirth. Whereas, because everything is about consciousness. We're here. It's all about higher and higher and higher levels of consciousness, and the more consciousness we gain, that is mastery. Mastery is degrees of greater realization, greater consciousness of what we're a part of. As the masters on Saturn, in meditation for 90,000 years, and on the sun for 500,000 years in meditation, which to us seems, we just can't even begin to fathom it. But then time is infinite.
Mastery over matter.
Mastery over matter. Mastery over matter. Because this physical matter is going to fall away, but it's only the physical matter. You're still here. In fact, there's only one of us actually here. There's only one of us actually here, and that is realization. And if you want to know more, there's 3 very good lectures Dr. George King gave on the spirit realms, realm of the masters, and the life after death seminar. Thank you. Thank you, Ashima. Thank you, Stone.
Thank you, everybody.